What's up? What's up? Trey from the chest. My name is Justin Groth. Guys, I want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for giving me your listening ear. It's greatly appreciated. Guys, have you ever thought back to when you were a little kid and how you had no fear? And that you would get yourself into whatever, it didn't matter because you just wanted to experiment and you wanted to see what it was all about. Even if your parents told you no, you still went for it. Do you remember back in those days? Now, how are you currently? What are you like now? You see, neurologically, the constituents have not changed. The elements that are in our brain are no different than when we were a child. The thing that's different now is your fear reservoir is much more filled up than your risk reservoir is. And when you're a kid, you don't even know what fear is. All you understand is experimentation. All you want to do is experiment, and that's associated with risk, right? Because we don't understand what's going to happen based on what the result of the experiment is or the experience is going to be. And because of that, we have no fear. And we delve right in. But through a process of negativity and denouncement coming from others, you slowly start to regress, and your fear reservoir builds and your fear reservoir builds and your risk reservoir lessens. And then as an adult, you end up coping in different ways with different mechanisms because you're an adult and you can do so. When you're a kid, you can't drink, you can't smoke, you don't know what those things are, even hopefully you don't, or do drugs. But now as an adult, all those things are open to you. They're all at your disposal. And so as a byproduct, you go down a big rabbit hole. And you never really fully engage in everything that you are for fear. But see, the fear has birthed a type of almost like a dead end with you. And you can't go further than that fear because it stopped you in your tracks. And it stopped you because others around you have told you you can't do that, or stop dreaming, or stop living in a fantasy world. I've gotten that a lot. But see, if you were a child, you wouldn't hear any of that. And even if you heard it, it wouldn't register. You would still keep going. You would still try to experiment, because that's from the years of 0 to 7. Those are your formative years. Your brain's just absorbing, and it's experimenting in the process. But see, you lose a lot of that. Sometimes people lose it through just the family that they're in. They lose it through going through sports and being brought down in sports. What I mean by that is they may not perform the best, or they may be brought up in a family that is just so dominant on dominating in sports. And if that child messes up, they're getting on their case. They're not building them up. And so that child grows up with like a deformity in regards to their risk reservoir, their risk factor that they take. And because they think that I can't do this, or they don't essentially have the armor to go into battle or go into something that they stand for, or they believe in, or that they want to do, because their fear factor is much higher. And the only way that we're ever going to be enlightened and become everything that you and I were supposed to be is if our risk reservoir is filled up over our fear reservoir. You can't have the fear. If we lived in fear every day that this world would experience a catastrophe, we all were to die, what would be the incentive or the inspiration to build that business? What would it be? There wouldn't be any because we might die tomorrow. So who cares? Why are we going to put our energy into it? You can't live like that. For the person that lifts weights, if he were to have the fear associated with his weightlifting and that he might get injured that day and not be able to lift for 6 months, what's the inspiration to go into the gym and continue to plug away at his body, at his health, for fear that he might get hurt? You can get hurt any way. It doesn't have to be by lifting weights. You can get hurt stepping up onto a curb. I've heard of people pulling their quad stepping up onto a curb. You cannot live in fear. I understand fear in certain regards, like, I don't know, fear of a lion mauling you to death. Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous. That's horrific, actually. I think it's okay to have a fear like that. It's okay to have a fear when you look into if you were standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon and looking into the Grand Canyon for fear that you don't want to fall in the Grand Canyon. You don't want to fall. That's a valid fear. But the fear that stops you from embracing everything that you are, all of your chemical wiring, for fear of exposing your DNA, for who you are inside, internally, viscerally, mentally, that fear needs to be lessened, and that risk needs to be heightened. That can't have a balance. That's the only thing in your life that should never stay in balance, is fear alongside risk. The risk needs to be there. And check this out, even if the reward isn't. The fear needs to leave and the risk needs to be prevalent, even if the reward isn't there. Because the failure, you hear this all the time. There's success in the failure. But let's word it like this. There's success in the risk. The risk needs to be ingrained in you, because that is the only way you're going to see what you're made of. Just like when you're a kid and you don't care what the risk is because you don't understand, because you haven't been alive long enough, and you're so naive and influenceable. I'm not saying be influenceable, but I'm saying I need you to live with a little bit more of I want to say this. I want you to live with a little bit more of an integral and purposeful naivete. Meaning that you understand what you're doing. You understand you're being naive, but it's for the benefits of you going out on that ledge and risking what others said can't be done, or risking what others don't believe in you for. You need to risk that and stop predicating your moves based on what others have done or what others think you should do. Because here is the blind truth. 90% of the people that you associate with today, 90% of them, or if not more, don't care if you succeed, or, and this is the heartbreaker here, don't want you to succeed. And these are the same people that you have passionate conversations with. 90% of them don't care or don't want you to succeed. Crazy. It's audacious to think that 90% of the people that you mess with today, that you call your friend, don't care if you succeed or don't want you to succeed. But yet you're predicating your moves on those people. Why? Why? When they go to sleep and they don't even think about you. if you died, they would cry a little and then be over it in 2 days. Why do you predicate your moves, your life, and possibly diluting your legacy based on how others view you and view where they think you should be or what you should be doing? I know it doesn't make any sense, but yet you're still living that way. You wake up every day and you're still living that way. You may hear this message, it may resonate with you, it may compute, and you may get on fire for 27 seconds, but then it dissipates. You need to be on fire like this every single day. And if you get bad people coming your direction, you got to learn how to be resilient and deflect them, because they don't matter. Their thoughts don't matter. When are you going to learn? When are you going to understand and apply it? It's not up to them, it's up to you. They do not coagulate what you're going to do in your life. You do. You form it. You predicating everything off of what God has built inside of you and what He's given you, and you applying action behind it. That is how you leave your footprint. Everybody else can't see what you see. Everybody else doesn't have the mindset that you have. Everybody else doesn't view the things that you view the way that you do. Everybody else isn't as inspired, as you are. Everybody else doesn't have the drive that you have to make the component that you want to make happen. They don't have that same element that you have. That's why you never apply yourself to everybody else. Once you start living for you, and I mean by grafting your life in the way that you feel the most authentic and natural with, that is when you propel to levels that you dreamt about. But unless you're willing to take a risk, unless you're willing to subside the fear and build up the risk reservoir over the fear reservoir until you decide that for your life. Because I can't decide it for you. No one can. Your mom, your dad, nobody can. Once you decide to take more of a risk like you did when you were 5, 6 years old, that's when you start to see things fall into place like you never believed they would. You may be hearing this and you may be 42 years old. It's still not too late. You're still on track. But you need to stop allowing others to predicate your path.